Hi, everybody, and welcome. My name is Alexa Jett, and I am with ANCAN. We are so excited for you to be here tonight, and we're so excited to present this topic to you. This is going to be very informative and very interactive. We would love to answer any of your questions. Just please keep them general, non-specific, as we cannot give medical advice. And you will find a questions panel, should be on your right side, and feel free to ask any question at any time using that tool, and we will be sure to hand it off to the right people. As you can see, here's our disclaimer. The information and opinions expressed in this presentation are not intended as recommendations by ANCAN or its representatives for any medical treatment, product, or course of action. You should always consult with a doctor about your specific case before pursuing any medical health program or treatment. And second of all, we would love to give a big thank you to our sponsors, Myovant Sciences, Pfizer, Foundation Medicine, and ANCAN, Every Life Foundation, Stronger Than Sarcoidosis, Chris Johnson Foundation, and Bagot Cancer. I'm going to ask our founder, Rick Davis, to come on and give us an introduction to lead us into this great webinar.
Good evening, everybody. It's a real honor and a pleasure, a privilege to introduce this webinar because when ANCAN was conceived, not then as ANCAN, but just as a platform to create virtual groups, it was always part of our plan that we would be extending that platform to rare diseases, because we recognize by very definition that if you had a rare disease, it was pretty hard to get together with other folks for a live support group meeting. And as we have developed over the last 10 years and over the last 5 years as a fully fledged nonprofit, we have ventured into the world of rare diseases. We have a seat on the RDLA Legislative Assembly that meets on a regular basis. And we host at this time, 2 groups for rare diseases, sarcoidosis and renal medullary carcinoma, with a 3rd one starting very shortly, we hope, for young onset Parkinson's. And in the past, for a couple of years, we hosted male breast cancer, which is also a rare disease. And so ANCAN has a real commitment to supporting rare diseases. One of our lead moderators for the sarcoidosis group is Kaitlyn Mall, and it's been a pleasure to work with her over the last year as we've built up our sarcoidosis virtual groups. And with that, I would like to introduce Kaitlyn, who is going to be our host for the evening.
Thank you, Rick. It's always a pleasure working with ANCAN. As Rick said, my name is Kaitlyn Mall, and I'm going to be your moderator for this event. The first person that I would like to bring on is Kaitlyn Mall. Kaitlyn joins us from Every Life Foundation. She is the RDLA coordinator. Before coming to RDLA, she went to the American University and graduated with her master's in public policy. She also went to the Appalachian State University and received a bachelor's in science. Welcome, Kaitlyn. There she is. How are you, Kaitlyn? We can't hear Kaitlyn at this moment.
Got it. Okay, sorry.
There you go.
It wouldn't let me unmute myself. Hello, I hope everybody is doing great. Thank you for the introduction. I'm Kaitlyn Mall. I'm here with trying to figure out how to share my slides with you all. Can everyone see my screen?
Not yet.
Not your screen, no.
What about now?
There you go.
Yes.
Wonderful. Great. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about the power of patient advocacy. My agenda for the afternoon, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Every Life Foundation for Rare Diseases, also about rare disease legislative advocates. We are going to touch on the power of patient advocacy and how to get started in your advocacy. So the Every Life my screen keeps popping back and forth. The Every Life Foundation for Rare Diseases is a 501c3 nonprofit, nonpartisan organization, and we are dedicated to empowering the rare disease patient community to advocate for science-driven legislation and policy that advances equitable development in life-saving diagnosis and treatments and cures for rare diseases. One very important quote that I always like to include in presentations is from our executive director, Julia Jenkins, where she says, "We do not speak for patients. We provide the training, education, resources, and opportunities for patients to make their voices heard. By activating the patient advocate, we can change public policy and save lives." So I'm here to really talk to you about how we do that. So again, we believe that no disease is too rare to deserve treatment. We believe that rare disease therapies should be safe and effective, and believe that we could do more with the science that we already have to provide treatments and cures for those with rare diseases. Our policy goals are to close the innovation gap. So there are 93% of rare diseases that do not have an FDA-approved treatment. Our goal is to close that gap and help find treatments for this 93% of rare diseases. We would like to eliminate the diagnostic odyssey for rare disease patients. So if you are unfamiliar, many rare disease patients go years without getting a diagnosis from doctors, specialists, you name it. So our goal is to really eliminate that long time period that patients have to go through before receiving a diagnosis. We would like to improve the regulatory process and advance regulatory science for the rare disease therapies, as well as ensure equitable patient access to safe therapies and cures at the earliest moment possible. So we want to be able to catch these rare diseases at a time where treatment therapies may be more efficient or may be more effective for patients. Most importantly, we empower the patient to develop an impactful voice in policymaking, drug development, and the regulatory decision-making process. And we do this through rare disease legislative advocates. So RDLA, you'll hear me refer to it as that, is a program of the Every Life Foundation. RDLA works to educate patient advocates about how legislation and policy impact the availability and access to treatments and provide them with resources to do this. We build awareness for rare diseases and policy that can impact those with rare diseases on Capitol Hill. And we ensure that Congress hears directly from patients and caregivers. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about that further into the presentation. Again, it's our goal to connect every member of Congress with a rare disease advocate. So when they are considering legislation, they aren't just thinking about treating a disease, they're thinking about saving a person that they know and have a connection with. I think one very important point when speaking about rare diseases is to note the fact that rare diseases are not so rare. There's an estimated 379, an estimated over 700,000 rare diseases and over 30 million people affected. It's on average 6.3 years that a rare disease patient will go without a diagnosis, which again, like I was just speaking about, that's such a long time to not know exactly what is going on with your body and with your health. So again, it is our goal to shorten that period. And you can see here the average number of specialists that rare disease patients see since their first symptom is 16.9. So not only are you waiting a very long time period, you're spending lots of money going to all of these specialists for these appointments. So what can you do? Advocate. And why would you do that? So it's important to advocate for yourself, for your loved one, and for the community overall. It's important to advocate, to educate lawmakers, and to solve a problem. So when you see a loved one you have with a rare disease, you know, you want to help them so much and there's only so much you can do, but one thing you can absolutely do is advocate for them. And it's important to advocate because legislation and public policy do impact healthcare, not only for you, but also for your loved ones who have rare diseases. It's advocating will help close the gap for the 93% of rare diseases with no FDA approved treatment. Again, eliminate the diagnostic odyssey and help reach these other goals that the Every Life Foundation works so hard toward. I'm going to talk to you about the power of grassroots advocacy because that's really what the Every Life Foundation and RDLA do. So what we try to do is activate the patient voice so that all rare disease patients are able to speak for themselves. And in order to do that, you all have to realize that you do have the power to affect change. You can do this by taking an active role in the political process, and this means voting. This means going to town halls that your current legislators or those running for office may have.
Have we lost Kaitlyn?
I think we did.
Yeah, I think we lost Kaitlyn.
She might be having thunderstorms as well. Seems like it's coming across the country. Shall we try to get her back and maybe move forward? Let's do that.
Kathleen, why don't you share a little bit about your backstory while we wait for Kaitlyn?
Sure. As Rick said before, my name is Kaitlyn Mall. I advocate for my rare disease, which is sarcoidosis. I'm a patient advocate for the Foundation of Sarcoidosis, a co-founder and secretary for Stronger Than Sarcoidosis, a moderator for the National Online Support Group, which is hosted by ANCAN, who is hosting also this webinar, and much more. I usually attend Every Life Rare Disease Week annually, probably for the past 4 years. Oh, I think we made Kaitlyn come back. Hi, Kaitlyn. I was just giving them a little bit of background for myself. And I was just telling them that for the past 7 years, I have been part of your rare disease week that offers training. And this year, as well as last year, we got to speak to different senators and many other people through virtual appointments with elected officials. I have many friends that are also patient advocates. I would have never found them if it was not for probably Stronger Than Sarcoidosis, because we always say that you're not alone in this. So with those friends, they help me advocate through this maze of advocating, because I'll be very honest, it is extremely daunting. And I think Kaitlyn is now back with us.
I am so sorry. I do not know what's going on. I haven't had this issue before.
Kaitlyn, it's wonderful because I was able to speak about Rare Disease Week a little bit, so it's all
Perfect.
good.
Perfect. Let me get back to my slide. I'm so sorry.
It's not a worry. I'll see you soon.
Great. Okay. So again, your legislators want to hear from you. You are their constituent. You hopefully, if you didn't vote for them in office, you voted for someone in office, but they were voted there. They want to hear from you. You are the expert on your rare disease experience. So it's important to share this. You can see here, this is a study that was done by the Congressional Management Foundation. So this is proven, this is science. This shows us when members of Congress are voting, what has the most influence on them. So you can see that in-person visits from their constituents have the greatest impact on members of Congress. Even if you can't go visit with them, just contact from their constituents also has almost the same exact impact. And then you can see going down from there, postal letters, emails, phone calls, telephone town hall comments. So all of these things that you can do, even if you cannot get to Washington to visit with your member in person, there's so many other ways that you can make your voice heard. And the important thing to know is that when you are seeing all the different ways a piece of legislation has to become a bill, you see all these little squares here, and that's a different action that has to be taken. So think of each of these squares as a different entry point for you. So you don't have to start right at the beginning when the bill gets its number. If you start when the bill is on the floor, that's okay. You can still influence your member. So think of these as all of your different entry points. So how do you advocate? Again, it's very important to create a relationship with your state and federal legislators. I say state because every issue isn't going to be federal. Some will be state, and this will simply depend on what the issue is that you are advocating for. Again, share your story with a policy ask. So when you do meet with a member of Congress, it's very important to share what the problem is, what the solution is, and what they can do. So sharing your story, make sure you're not only telling them, hey, this is what I've been through, this is what the community is going through, but be sure to tell them what they can do about it. How can they help you? Be sure to ask questions. Ask questions from your member of Congress. Ask them what they're doing for the rare disease community. It's also important to engage with organizations to support you. So finding a support group, and you can do this through ANCAN, find a support group to connect with others who are going through the same thing as you, and also support others with their policy goals when they align with your own, and also activate your own network. You have one. So by having your diagnosis, you do have a network. Find your network, activate them, and get them into advocacy with you, because there's so much to be done here. And to get started, so the first thing you have to do is determine your goal. So again, every ask is going to start with a problem. So your problem could be insurance coverage, it could be needing a treatment, it could be needing a diagnosis, funding for research, it could be anything related to your rare disease. So first you're going to start with your problem. And again, it could even be something like raising awareness for your rare disease or education about your rare disease. This could be broad. And then from there, you're going to engage with your legislators. Again, this could be governor or state legislators for state issues, or federal issues. You'll go to your members of Congress, your representatives, and your senators. It's also really important to know what members are on the committee of jurisdiction. So if you're wanting to advocate for a specific bill, it's very important to know what committee that bill is in and what members are on that committee. So for instance, we have the STAT Act that was just introduced. If that's something that you want to advocate for, it's important to go. You can go on congress.gov, find out which committee that this bill is in, and then move from there. Find the members that you can advocate with. Again, it's also important to get in contact with leadership. If your member of Congress is a majority or minority leader, use that to your advantage. You can also advocate to government agencies. So if you are advocating for something that has direct correlation with the FDA, with the NIH, you can also advocate to them. And again, do not forget about your state and local representatives. Many times, local policies are those that do impact you the most. So be sure to not forget about advocating on the local level as well. And I also just want to give you a tip here. When you are meeting with your member of Congress, many times they're busy and you will meet with their staff. Please note that this staff is an amazing resource. They are the experts on these issues. So in-district meetings are also easier to schedule oftentimes than meetings in DC. So in August, when your members go on recess, or throughout the year when your members go on recess, they'll be in the district. This is a great time to schedule a meeting with your members in district office. Like I said, oftentimes these are easier to schedule and they can be more beneficial for you. So also, when you're getting started, it's important to know when to engage. We like to say anytime and all the time is a great time to engage. Again, your member does not have to be in DC to advocate. You can get them while they're in the district, if you can't come to DC, fantastic. Again, be sure to pay attention to a bill's progress through the House and Senate and schedule meetings around the key events in that cycle. So if you're following one specific bill and you see it's getting ready to go to committee or it's getting ready to come onto the floor, that's a great time to schedule a meeting because your member is getting ready. It's moving closer to when they have to vote on it. So again, watch the bill move through the cycle, and it's a great idea to schedule our meetings around that. But most importantly, don't wait until it's too late. We really encourage you to be vocal early about the issues that you care about. If a bill is already on the floor being voted for, there's not much you can do about it at that point. So be sure and get in and have your voice heard as early as you can. So how to get started? There are many ways that different tactics, many ways to advocate to your members of Congress. But the important note is no matter how you do it, make it personal. So again, phone calls, town halls, social media, op-eds, all these things, they have an impact on your member of Congress, their decision making. In-person meetings, always a great tool. Hold briefings. So if you are part of an organization like RDLA, we often hold briefings with the Rare Disease Caucus. And this is, I will talk about this a little later, but briefings are a great tool to educate not only the community, but the staffers of these members of Congress. Letters and emails are also very powerful. Going to the media can also be very powerful as well, but most important, all of this is engagement. So you don't have to do all of these pieces. Just know that it is most important to be engaged and to be persistent, because the first time you make an ask might not be the time that it clicks with your member. You may have to come back, make more asks, stay in contact with them, and all of this engagement is going to help you continue to build a relationship with your member. Also note that social media is a great advocacy tool. So as you have noticed, I'm sure, many members of Congress, politicians, they are all on social media now. So use that to your advantage. Make them aware of the problems that you face. And you can see some examples here on the right side of the screen where people have tagged their member and said, you know, thank you so much for supporting this bill, making it public that they support this, or saying, it was great to meet you. Please keep the rare disease community in mind with healthcare reform. So it's important to use social media as an advocacy tool because not only will it draw attention to the things your members of Congress are doing, it will get their attention. And it's also a nice thank you. So thanking them for the actions that they take, thanking them for meeting with you. But most importantly, when you do these things, make sure that you do tag the member so that they do see your post. And this is the same for all social media platforms. I know the examples we have here from Twitter, but this can be said for all social media platforms. Again, persistence, follow up and grow relationships with your legislators. And you can do this in many ways. Like I said, it's important to thank them after the meeting, not only the member, but the staffer who met with you, because they are the one that will be in the member's ear when it does come time to vote or to give them more information on what they are voting for. Following up after a meeting and saying, you know, you when I met with you said that you would join the Rare Disease Congressional Caucus. Have you done so? Would you like more information? So following up is very important. Also, many members of Congress have newsletters, so you can sign up for the stay up to date with what they're doing or follow them on social media, of course. Again, look for opportunities to engage with your member. You can do this in person with things such as town halls. And calling the member's office is always a great tool. You can do this from anywhere. It's nice, easy, quick. Just call the member's office for any action like them to take, any ask that you have. And again, when the member does do something you have asked of them, it's very important to thank them. Not only is this a great way to show appreciation, but it allows you to stay in touch with the staff and to continue building this relationship. So if you would like to advocate, RDLA would love to have you. We send out monthly newsletters. We have action alerts. The action alerts are a really great tool. So we have them for different bills that are in Congress right now. We have a message that's already typed out to your members saying why they should support whichever bill it is that you select. All you have to do is put in your name and address and hit send, and that message will go to your member of Congress. You can also personalize the message, edit it to say different things if you would like. So our action alerts are a great tool. And we also hold monthly webinars. Again, these are always free. All of RDLA's events, resources, everything are always free. Our monthly webinars are a great way to just stay in the know about what's going on in the rare disease community, not only at the state level, but mostly at the federal level. So we will have advocates come in, and if they are with an organization, say we have one organization that we work with that works very closely on Allie's Act, they'll come in and say, hey, this is where the bill's at, this is what we're doing, this is how you can help. So coming to those webinars is a really great way to get involved, and I really encourage you to come and join us. You can find out more about what all is going on at RDLA and how to get signed up for these newsletters at rareadvocates.org. And we encourage you to join us for some of our events and programs as the next step in your advocacy journey. So Rare Across America, let me go on to the next slide. I'll talk to you about Rare Disease Week first. So Rare Disease Week is an event that we are actually taking registration for right now. It is usually in DC during actual Rare Disease Week in February, but we have moved it to the summer this year, and we did so hoping that we can be in person, but that just wasn't possible. So we are holding Rare Disease Week virtual this year, but that's great because then you can attend from everywhere. You don't have to make the travel to DC. And this event is a really great opportunity, not just to meet with your member of Congress, but also to learn more about advocacy and to learn more about different legislation in the rare disease space. Again, registration's open now. You can register at rareadvocates.org/RDW. The event is going to be taking place the week of July 14th as well as the week of July 20th. Events will not be every single day those 2 weeks. We've just split it up, so it's not 1 week of lots of events. So the first day is going to be July 14th, and we will be hosting a rare disease congressional caucus briefing. Again, these caucus briefings are a really great tool. We will be hearing from industry experts. You'll be hearing from members of Congress. So absolutely encourage you to join us for that. We will also be hosting a documentary screening. And then on July 15th, our first day of legislative conference will take place. So legislative conference is where you find out what is going on right now. So what bills are in Congress? What is beneficial to you? What can you do as an advocate? And how can you help the community as a whole? So I really encourage you to join us for that as well. And our Rare Artist Gallery is going to open on July 15th, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about that in a second. July 16th, we'll have our second day of legislative conference. And one really cool thing about the conference is we have breakout sessions during the conference. So we'll have one for young adults. We'll have others for networking opportunities, social hours, different things like this. On the 16th, we will also have a graduation for our young adults who have just completed our Leadership Academy. They've been working very hard, so we're very excited to celebrate them. And then we are going to have a meetup session for our young adult advocates. That is what YAR stands for, is Young Adult Representatives of RDLA. This is for anyone who is between the ages of 16 and 30. I really encourage you to join this. This is a really amazing opportunity to meet people your age who are going through exactly what you're going through and who want to connect with you, build relationships with you, advocate with you. So any young adults, absolutely encourage you to come join us for the meetup. And then the next week, we will kick off July 20th, having virtual meetings with representatives. So this is where you will have the opportunity to speak to your representative about your ask that you have for them. And then on July 21st, you will be able to do the same with your senators. And new this year, we have the diversity roundtables on July 22nd. This is going to be a really cool event. We are hosting different roundtables with different diversity caucuses in Congress. So this will include the Congressional Black Caucus, this will include the LGBTQ caucus, and more. So this is going to be a really fantastic new event. And please note that registration is still open for all of these events aside from the virtual meetings with representatives and senators. But you can still absolutely register. You can email me, I will get you registered. But you can register for all of the other events using the link that I gave you. So again, register for everything using the link, email me to register for meetings with your members of Congress. And one really fun thing we are doing this year is giving away $100,000 worth of grants. So advocates throughout Rare Disease Week will have the chance to win anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000 for their rare disease organization of choice. Advocates will earn points for attending events such as virtual Hill meetings, legislative conference, things like that. And the top 50 point earners will win a grant. Who you give it to is completely up to you. It's your rare disease organization of your choice. And we are going to make the donation in your name. So this is a really great, really cool opportunity to give back to an organization that's near and dear to your heart. So again, come learn more, advocate to your member of Congress, and win money for your organization. It's a win-win here. And Rare Across America, this is the event I said I would touch on a little more. So this is held every August. And we hold these in August when members of Congress are on recess. So they're back in the district, and you will go meet with them at their district office instead of traveling to DC. So Rare Across America is a really cool opportunity. You don't have to travel far to a member of Congress or their staffer. And it's a great opportunity to network with rare disease advocates who live close to you or in your space. So I encourage you to look out for that. And then again, for our young adults, ages 16 through 30, I encourage you to get involved in YAR. Fantastic, fantastic program. You can learn more about YAR by going to hearusyar.org. And then the Rare Artist Contest. So I spoke a little bit about the Rare Artist Gallery opening during Rare Disease Week. So our contest, it's really so exciting. So you are able to submit pieces of art. Those from the rare disease community, I'd like for you to submit pieces of art. We will have a virtual art gallery for people to walk through and look at the art. You can share it now through July 16th. And we encourage you to go to rareartist.org to learn more about this program. Finalists for Rare Artists are awarded with individual advocacy coaching, as well as a cash prize of $500 and an opportunity to come to Washington, D.C. to display their artwork at the Rare Artist Reception during Rare Disease Week on Capitol Hill next year. So it's a great opportunity not only to showcase your art, and what it means to you and how it connects to the rare disease community, but you will also be able to come to Washington next year and join us at our Rare Artist Reception. I hope that this has been helpful for you. We encourage you to keep in touch with us. Again, you can sign up for our newsletter, action alerts, event invitations, and more at rareadvocates.org. I encourage you to follow us on social media. You can find all of our social media handles here. And if you would like to contact anyone for policy, RDLA, state advocacy, or patient engagement, you can find those contacts here. And I'm happy to share these slides with you all so that you can refer back to all these links and all these emails and whatnot. So thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad I was able to join and share a little more with you all about RDLA, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Kaitlyn, thank you so much. As always, I always learn something new. I believe somebody in the audience had asked, what do you consider rare?
Good question.
Yeah, so we'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, so we actually, this past year, we did a rare burden study to show the cost of rare diseases. And this was a conversation we had in that time, you know, what's considered a rare disease? And I right now cannot remember the exact number calculation of how he did that, but basically for the rare burden study, we opened it up in a survey. So people with rare diseases were able to come to us, and we counted all of the, all of the submissions. And I can share more information with you about that to distribute to everyone. I'm sorry I don't have a better answer for you, but it's unfortunate that the amount of rare diseases, it fluctuates. There's no hard number. It's really hard to put to put a finger on what exactly is a rare disease, how many people have it, like what dictates that. And that's a situation that we addressed with the rare burden study. And again, I'm happy to share more information about that with you all.
Great. Thank you so much, Kaitlyn. Kaitlyn, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It was wonderful learning.
Absolutely.
And really, everybody, keep your questions coming in that chat and sign up for the RDLA. I'll see you in training soon. Thank you,
And I just
Kaitlyn.
want to know, I just saw in the chat that someone was asking about resources for those who are hard of hearing in meetings. And I just want to let everyone know that for our webinars and events, we always have lab transcripts. We have translation services. So we've tried to make these accessible as possible to all advocates. So please use those resources when you're joining us.
We will. Thank you so much, Kaitlyn. Thank you. So our next panelist today, this is Miss Richie Johnson. Richie, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good. I would like to just share a little bit about you, if you don't mind. So Richie is a mom, a registered nurse, an author, a speaker, and an advocate. Just a couple of things. In 2011, Richie placed her nursing degree on hold so that she could care for her adult son named Chris. Chris was diagnosed with a rare form of kidney cancer known as renal medullary carcinoma. Did I say that correctly?
Correct.
I've been working on that all day. So it's RMC for short, if I'm correct.
Correct.
And Chris sadly passed away 15 months later at age 39. After losing her son, Chris, Richie formed the Chris C.J. Johnson Foundation in memory of her son. She is a published author of Mama, I'm Tired, a mother's journey through her son's cancer battle with RMC. Richie, thank you so much for joining us this evening. And on behalf of everybody here, please accept our condolences on losing your son. We understand how difficult it is, not only to lose someone we love, but then to a rare disease.
Yes, thank you.
And I'm amazed at everything that you have done so far. I would like to ask you a question because I know I struggle with this. I struggle with advocating for myself, not only in the local platform, but also to those in the medical field. So do you have any recommendations for us how to get healthcare professionals not just to hear us, but to actually listen to us? Because you are in both sides of the field. So any thoughts, any tricks? I got my pen and paper ready.
Well, I think first of all, it is important that you're really aggressive and assertive with what you want to do and believe in what you're trying to do. Be passionate about it. I think it's important that you take a lot of notes and be knowledgeable of the disease or what's going on with that particular person. And then, you can adapt your own style to it, whatever you think works best to persuade people to hear you. I think it's important not to give up because at times it will seem that people are not interested. Of course they're not. It's not their cause, it's your cause. But persistence and just speaking what's on your mind and being there and just being able to answer questions, show them that you've done your homework, you're educated on on the disease process and why it's so important to advocate for this cause and be a voice for others.
Thank you on that. I feel like I have been strong, but I always feel like they're like, don't worry, but thank you for that. I will definitely be a little bit more aggressive. I think I'm always a little bit more passive, if that makes any
It's important
sense.
to just stand strong, as Chris would always say, stand strong, and just believe in what you're talking about.
Thank you. We did hear from Kaitlyn that it takes 6.3 years approximately, an average, of no diagnosis to finally get there. Was it the same for Chris with RMC?
No, it wasn't the same, but I can say it took about 2 years before he was diagnosed. Chris went to his physician complaining about his back hurting, and they would send him to a chiropractor. They would send him to physical therapy. No one at any time asked him if he had sickle cell trait, nor was he able to get an MRI, basically because of the insurance. It had to be approved. And just to say you have back pain is not enough ammunition, I could say, to get that MRI. So when he was finally approved, and this was like 2 years later, he had blood in his urine, and that's when his diagnosis, well, it actually wasn't made at that time. It was just said that he had a tumor that was 7 centimeters in size that was suspicious for cancer. And it was 2 weeks later before we found out that it was renal medullary carcinoma.
I'm sorry about that. Is there any way that you can think of, even for us to advocate to insurance companies? Did you find any special ways of helping that?
No, I think the advocacy was more so should have been on the medical side versus the insurance side, because what we found out as we walked this journey is that so many medical professionals had not heard of renal medullary carcinoma. As you know, sickle cell trait, there's a myth that it is benign. So therefore, physicians really don't ask you if you have sickle cell trait, especially being of color. That was just not one of their questions because everyone normally lives a healthy life and success, but it's because of lack of education. They spend 5 minutes in the medical curriculum regarding sickle cell trait. And I think that's where the advocacy is lacking, is with the medical personnel.
So we need to teach them about each of our diseases, in essence.
Education is so important.
Because I had a similar problem because I was not of African American descent. I didn't have sarcoidosis. So that was, yeah.
It's always that assumption.
Yes, very much. So I'm assuming that RMC affected your family life. I mean, how did your family survive? How did they help advocate?
It was difficult, and I have to be honest with you. I kept the seriousness of this particular cancer away from my family because my mom was in her 90s at the time, and I didn't want her to be too concerned. So I therefore kept a lot of it to myself and did most of the work. I put my career on hold so that I can give my son 101%. He was told at the time of diagnosis that he only had 3 to 4 months to live. So it's hard. It's a lonely journey because your family really don't understand. I had the love, I had the support. Don't get me wrong, I had that, but it's different when that person hadn't been on the same journey. We needed someone that knew what we were actually going through, and we didn't have that.
Which is in the support groups, am I correct? Through
Exactly.
ANCAN?
Yes.
Yeah. We're
And it's
finding
been
the same thing.
helpful. Yes, very helpful.
So important. So anybody who can start, a support group that knows about their disease, Absolutely. And that's a great way of advocating. Would you agree?
I agree, and we're so thankful for Rick and Alexa with ANCAN. We're a small community, but we need this. We need the love and the support of people that have actually walked through it. And I feel like I'm the oldest thing there, so I feel like I'm the mother of the group. But it's a good feeling when you know that you're able to help others, and that's how I get through the grieving process.
And that's why you started the CJ Foundation, was to help
Exactly.
others.
And it was Chris, to be honest, during his time of getting treatment at MD Anderson, he noticed a lack of advocacy for kidney cancer. And for sure, that was not anything on renal medullary carcinoma. And this is something he wanted to do. And it was his voice actually that caused Dr. Tanier, who's at MD Anderson, to actually start researching RAMC. So that just let you know how important your voice is. And if you say it in the right way and with enough determination, it make a huge impact. And from that point on, he said one person is too many to die from this cancer.
And he is 100% correct. And you raised a very, very smart young man.
Oh,
So
thank you.
I have another question for you on advocating. So other than helping people learn about this disease and help them through it and which ways to go and possibly doctors, et cetera, do you also advocate locally or state or federally? Have you ever done that?
Yes, I've been to Austin. I've
Mhm.
been to DC, and what I've done, since we are a small organization, is join forces with the other kidney cancer organizations. And of course, you know, together you have a lot of voice. So I've done that. I've also gotten pretty close with my local representative here, telling my story. And just by being out in the community, passing brochures out to various physician offices, because each one, I can tell you, hadn't heard of renal medullary carcinoma. And it's just so important. Education is the key, and that's all. Advocacy, you know, the awareness, the education, I mean, it goes hand in hand.
When you first started advocating, were you overwhelmed or weren't sure where to start, or did you have a little bit of insight due to being part of the medical community?
I'm going to tell you, I was out of my comfort zone. Being a nurse, I could do that. You know, being an advocate for my patients, I did that without even thinking about it. But now I was advocating for my son, who was extremely sick, and then just to learn how to get out there, say the right things, and with the right force. And so it was a little scary at first, but as you continue to do it, and as you continue to be comfortable in what you're talking about, it becomes easier and easier as the time go along.
Right. So so you never really became comfortable until you kept doing it. Because I think most of the people that I know, they're like, you advocate where? You go to DC? You actually talk to someone? Yes, I do. And they're like, aren't you like nervous? You know, you are. We're nervous with everything new in life, but I think we all have learned how to go about it.
And you know, they're human too. They enjoy hearing your story, and I think the more compassion you put in your story, they're gonna believe it. Some of the things that you say is gonna resonate with them when different bills or what have you come up, and they say, "Oh, I remember that story, and this lady went through this,"
Mm,
and that's how you get things passed.
yes. And what you just said is we do need to remember that they're all human,
Hmm.
including the medical professionals that we speak to. So
Exactly.
thank you so much, not only for sharing your story and Chris's, but for your insights on advocating this evening, Richie.
Thank you. I've enjoyed being here.
We enjoyed having and listening to you. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
So as you can see, everybody is not always comfortable with advocating. So what we must remember is we need to step outside of our comfort zone. So my next panelist, if he will come aboard, is Charles Mickels. Charles is a patient advocate, speaker, and author of another book, Mine's Parkinson's, What's Yours? Hi, Charles.
Hey, how are you doing tonight?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing very well.
So may I ask, why did you write the book?
Really just to share our journey. I was one, I'd already battled a chronic illness since I was 15 with rheumatoid arthritis. And we started noticing some struggles. And it took us about 4 or 5 years and 4 different neurologists to get an answer. We got told that I was too young to have Parkinson's disease. We got blown off by some. And I can remember one point just feeling like I was going out of my mind, like I had no idea what was happening. And so I just wanted to share the journey. And, a friend of mine asked me after we got the diagnosis, he said, how are you going to use this? And it was a real catalyst for us. And then my wife looked at me and she said, you really ought to start writing. You ought to tell the story about what's happening, just to encourage and share with others. And so basically it's just started as a series of blogs that we then turned into a book that just basically cataloged the good days, the bad days, the days where we felt alone, the days where we felt we could face it, the days we couldn't. And just to, if nothing else, give people an opportunity to say, somebody gets it. Somebody knows where we're coming from.
And I do understand that. So Parkinson's, that's not technically a rare disease though, is it?
It's not, but it is for younger people. In fact, it's fairly rare for people under 50 or 60 to be diagnosed with it. And the disease takes a much different track. It affects different, people different ways. And unlike a lot of people who develop Parkinson's who are later in life and maybe retired or, doing something else, I was still working. My children were teenagers. I had a young wife. I was in my early 40s when I got diagnosed. And so it was a different set of struggles we were walking through that a lot of people with Parkinson's didn't battle.
Okay, so it's mainly for a younger generation. So I'm assuming, and you can correct me please if I'm wrong, that it's considered a young onset disease of Parkinson's. Yeah. Am I correct? Okay,
yes.
See, I did a little bit of research, not a heck of a lot. So I expected to learn everything from you. So we understand that you have a family, yes?
Yes.
How was your family when you finally had this diagnosis of the Parkinson's?
It was almost a mixture. We had spent so many years trying to figure out what was wrong. And I'd actually reached the point where I would come home from work and just collapse every night. I couldn't participate and do a lot of the things. In fact, my family said it was like watching me waste away. And so there was almost a sense of some relief that we knew at least what we were battling and we had a plan. But it was a lot to process. My children have been in counseling. As I would tell you, I look at my wife and my kids as superheroes. They really are amazing because while I'm fighting this battle, they're having to watch, they're having to support, they're having to care, and they're fighting a whole different battle. And to see just the grace and the love and the care, because it's hard. It's hard for them to see their dad or their husband suffer and sometimes feel powerless to impact it.
Did you ever want to hide that somewhat from them and not tell them the full story? Were they old enough to understand that? I know some families may not understand. So
yeah, there were times where it was hard for me to talk about. I have a very intuitive wife, so didn't always have to say a lot. She could tell when I was having a rough day. But they knew something was wrong with Daddy, and they knew that I could not do all the things that their friends' fathers could or participate in. And so, for them, it was a reality of life they had to learn to live with very early on.
okay. And did they help you advocate at all? Did you teach them how? Well, first off, let's rewind. Sorry, I'm going way too fast. So how did you learn how to advocate for yourself, first off?
For me, a lot of it just came down to just sharing our story. and trying to connect with people. I was very fortunate that I had a wife that helped advocate to get the diagnosis, which was so hard. But like I said, for neurologist, she would go with me to the appointment. She would ask the questions that I sometimes didn't think about. And so you're just learning to have that voice and to share and not be embarrassed, not be afraid, not worry about what people are going to think, on the days you're struggling, on the days that you weren't for lack of a better word, happy little warrior that was going through life, and just be real. And then beyond that, how could we then help and pour into others and do that?
Okay, so your wife helped you advocate to the medical professionals, and you started telling your story. How then did it advocate into, have you been advocating locally or to your state or federal governments?
I'm very new into the advocacy journey. Up until this last year, I was an elementary principal, and so that took a lot of time. And so now I've changed professions, and I'm doing this, and it gives me the freedom, and time to do this. But a lot of the advocacy has been toward education and just making people aware, of what families walk through as they're struggling with this, and then connecting and reaching out one-on-one. What I found is, a lot of young patients feel alone. It was probably 6 to 8 months after my diagnosis before I met even one person that was in my age group. And we talked on the phone, and it was just one of those watershed moments where it was like, wow, somebody gets it. And then to be able to have my children come alongside and help me. My daughter and son have shared some of their story with others, and just share what it's like. And so beginning that, we're in the process of beginning to form a nonprofit and start some support groups, and just a lot of things that are happening along with the writing, just to begin to share that story and hopefully help people realize they're not alone, and there's somebody there that can walk with them through it.
Excellent. Because we're not alone in any of this rare disease, and that's why Stronger Than Sarcoidosis even says you're not alone. I'm hoping to see you as part of the RDLA for maybe this year and learn a little bit.
Yes, I took some notes and got all the information myself. So
excellent. So hopefully we will come around in the groups. Will your family also be involved in advocating? Or are you thinking of just doing it yourself, or?
No, that is something, and even the nonprofit that we're working on beginning, my wife and I have talked about being very involved in that, and tackling it from all sides, and realizing that it's not just the patient that's walking this path, it's the family, and often, they're kind of the forgotten piece. They're the ones that, people ask about me and how I'm doing, but sometimes they don't always ask, my wife, how are you doing? How are you holding up? My kids, how are they doing? My parents, my sister, any of those that are having to walk this path with us. And I think that's important as we advocate, that it's not just for the patient, but it's for the families who are also walking this path with the person.
I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. And Charles, I want to thank you for joining us this evening, sharing your story, your family's story. And it is so important for families to be involved with all of this advocacy.
Yes.
So no matter how old or how young, you can learn how to advocate.
Absolutely.
So, Charles, thank you so much for being with us this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. So advocating is not just singular. Remember to always have your family part of it with you. They're the ones that live with you every day. And I think part of my problem has always been that I've kept people on the outside. I'm working on that. That's the best I can say. And as long as you're working on it, that's all that matters. Our last panelist is Trina Massey Davis. Trina is a full-time state employee. She's also a patient advocate and peer mentor for the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research. She has also advocated locally and in person at Rare Disease Week in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill. I don't know if Trina was able to make it on camera. She was having some problems. So Trina, are you with us on the telephone?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us, Trina. How are you this evening?
All is well. Will not complain.
I'm so glad. So I know you personally, but the rest of our audience does not. So first off, I mentioned that sarcoidosis is a rare disease. Could you explain to us what sarcoidosis is in a short term? Trina?
Sure.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah. Trying to get the sorry.
It's okay.
Sure. Okay, there we go. Now, what sarcoidosis is inflammation. It's an inflammatory disease that inflammatory cell that is known for or named by or called by granulomas. And
Trina?
what this is yes.
Trina, I'm sorry to break in, but I can barely hear you.
Oh, that. How's the connection now?
Okay, I can still hear you.
Okay.
There you
I
are.
don't know. I'm not tech savvy. I apologize.
It's not a worry. Thank you for joining us.
Sure.
So
Okay, as I was
sarcoidosis
saying,
was inflammatory. I heard that.
yes. Sarcoidosis is an inflammatory disease, which the inflammatory cells create tiny clumps of cells that can attack or settle within any organ within its body or in your body. And those inflammatory cells are also known as granulomas.
Okay. May I ask you, how long did it, we've been listening to everybody, Richie and Charles, and Kaitlyn told us it was 6.3 years on average for a diagnosis. So how long did it take you to get diagnosed with sarcoidosis?
For me, I began having symptoms early 90s. It wasn't until I moved from the north to the south 10 years later. So between 9 and 10 years before I got the proper diagnosis.
And were you misdiagnosed previous? Because you and I had spoken briefly and you were misdiagnosed, I thought?
That
Or
is
no?
correct. Early 90s, I was misdiagnosed with different things. First, it was bronchitis, then it was asthma. I was given several different inhalers. No one never thought to do a chest x-ray to see what was going on. And it wasn't until late, I want to say 1999 or early 2000 when I actually had a bronchoscopy done of the lung to actually get a proper diagnosis.
Oh, wow, that was a long time.
Yes.
So we've been talking about advocating, and I know you have personally helped me with advocating to my doctors at times. So have you advocated locally as well within your community?
Yes, I'm very well acquainted with my with my representative for my district. So much so that at one time his administrative assistant left the floor to give me a call to let me know they're reading a letter from someone in regards to sarcoidosis. So just putting yourself out there, not being afraid to advocate, not just for you, but people like you, it helps um, with on a local level, going into the office, scheduling your appointments, of course, on the local level and on the federal level. Just getting your face so they can get your face out there and your name out there so they can be well acquainted with, okay, I heard of this disease. Oh, yes, somebody in my district or somebody in my community has this disease. So let's move this forward and see how we can help.
And that is a great idea. So definitely touch base with people, whether it be by phone or because no longer are we in person at this time. Hopefully we will go back that way.
Yes.
So I know I met you for the first time at Rare Disease Week in Washington, D.C. So, and I know that you had been advocating federally much longer than I had. So could you tell us how you came to learn to advocate on the federal level? So in DC.
Okay. Well, it started with, I believe it was 2013 or 2014. I woke up going into a accelerated heart rate, made my way to ER, and at the window, registration, I let them know that I had sarcoidosis. I went into another area of the hospital where they began to connect me with different fun machines. And at that point, I laid there and I said, something has to be done. Please, Lord, allow me to survive this so that I can share my story and maybe this will help someone. So much so that I had recovered, going into cardiac arrest, and stayed in the hospital, I think a day or two after that for observation. At that point, hospice was called because they was uncertain if I was going to pull through, and I did. It took me a minute to kind of grasp it all. When you're going through something traumatic such as that, you really want to kind of be selfish and try to figure out what is next, what's my next steps. So my next steps, I began to write how I felt, my vision, my goals in life, and decided to pick up a pen and paper and write to my representative here in the state of Georgia. In doing so, while I was at work one day, his legislative director called me to let me know they received my letter and how can they help. And I explained the situation, not just with me, but for people in the rare disease community. Oftentimes we are left behind and forgot about. At that point, I had mentioned about the Foundation for Sarcoidosis and how, um, during the time when I was newly diagnosed, they were just coming out, and I would like to bring them aboard with us if we're going to do anything. And at that point in time, he got back with me and he said, listen, I would like for y'all to come to Capitol Hill and host a congressional briefing. And that was in October 2015, if I'm correct. And from that point on, I just felt that there was hope and that we can move this forward and we're going to play it forward. And in doing so, it opened up other channels like the Every Life Foundation, getting familiar with them because I never heard of them before, not being sarcastic or condescending, but just when you stay in a box, you're not, how can I put it, you're not able to receive those things, those tools and resources when you're staying in a box. But when you come out that box, pretty much the world is your oyster. And you
Yes.
become knowledgeable when you start speaking with people that are just like you or have similar things going on in their life compared to yours. So once I learned about the Every Life Foundation, I give them kudos. They do an excellent job. I was so geared up, Catherine. I began participating in Rare Disease Week. I would just actually hold off on vacation, and that would be my vacation. And it was just, if you have never participated before, it's something you must do. That's part of my bucket list.
I agree, but as you know, we all, you knew me as a really nervous person. So what would you suggest is the easiest way for people to start their advocating role? Just really quickly.
I would say just write down what direction you want to go, because there's so many directions you could take. Once you figure out what direction you want to go, it becomes easier. Make yourself accessible. Be open-minded. Follow the guidelines of Every Life Foundation, RDLA, your C policy, Global Genes is a good tool as well.
Yes.
They work within, if you have a community within Facebook, or or at your doctor's office, some of them are hosting virtual sessions for people with rare diseases. Join.
Right. And even the support groups like what we do on ANCAN. It's absolutely amazing.
Yes.
We see the difference. We do it twice a month and we see a huge difference in our community.
Absolutely.
So, Trina, I would like to thank you for telling us about your story about the misdiagnosis and really helping us and me to advocate. So thank you
Yes.
so much for
Thank you for
joining us
having me.
tonight. And
Thank you
now
for having me.
you're welcome. I would like to open it up to questions and answers. And our panelists are here, and so is Miss Alexa, because she is going to, I'm going to turn it over to her. Miss Alexa.
Hello. Well, first of all, what I want to say is, oh my goodness, Kathleen, I feel like we've learned so much already, and now we're going to really delve into things. Also, Charles's wife seems phenomenal. So I'm just saying she has a lot of new fans in this group. And he was also the fact that he credited her as helping him with everything, with his advocacy journey and stuff. I am also more of a fan of Charles as well. So Charles has done very well, and Richie sharing her story. And so I have a question myself. I do advocacy for my own condition, which is thyroid cancer. And I think something, especially in the rare disease community, it's very easy to get discouraged. And we've talked about that in the RMC support group, which I'm also a moderator here at ANCAN, about discouragement. How do all of you, our panelists, and you, Kathleen, how do you fight discouragement to keep on advocating, especially when people may not understand?
Charles?
For me, and thank you for those very sweet words. I do appreciate it. I am married to a wonderful woman. She's amazing. But part of it is just accepting those days. You're realizing that we're going to have days like that. I think sometimes we beat ourselves up if we're not feeling it that day. But sometimes we're going to have down days. We're going to have discouraging days. It's just choosing not to live in that, and having some people around you that will give you a hug when you need to, or give you a kick in the pants when you need to keep going and keep fighting and keep moving. And I think those are important things to do when you're having those discouraging moments.
Richie, do you have anything to add to that?
I think that is perfectly normal to have those discouraging days, but I think it also gives you insight to keep fighting. I compete to win, so therefore I just keep going. You just learn from maybe it's something you did wrong, and how can you do it better the next time. So don't let it prevent you from advocacy.
And Trina, what about you?
Yes, I would just say try a new approach.
No, that's perfect. I agree with that wholeheartedly. So, and Alexa, for myself, I've surrounded myself since we've started the support group with a lot of great sarcoidosis patients. And I have some great friends with stronger than sarcoidosis that say, hey, it's okay to take today. It's okay to cry. It's okay to yell and scream. And then, okay, the day's over. What's next? So you just have to keep pushing.
Fabulous. That's wonderful. We had a question from the audience, and it was on something Richie said. It was asked because Richie mentioned about the 5 minutes of education doctors get trained on for the sickle cell trait. What can we do to change that, not only for RMC and sickle cell patients, but for the rare disease community? How do we educate doctors before they're even licensed to practice?
I think it's important to attend workshops or seminars that they're active in. Also, maybe be a speaker or so at one of their professional organizations. Just anywhere you can just get your foot in the door where the physicians are there, or even just ask to do one of their grand rounds one day. You know, educating one, eventually it'll catch on with the next one and spread like wildfire. You know, if they're not going to put it in the curriculum in the medical schools, then by God, we can educate them ourselves.
That is so true, is that not? I know that sarcoidosis, there's one question on the test. So very similar to the RMC, and I'm sure to the early onset Parkinson's as well.
You know, and I think it's important too, in our particular arena, we have to change the mindset of what people think about sickle cell trait, to educate them over the fact that sickle cell trait has a lot of factors that involve different things, and it's not as benign as one would think.
And that's a really good thing. How do we go about doing that?
Once again, education and awareness. Those are the two key things that we have to do.
And I think when it becomes personal, when it's a personal face to it and it's not a statistic or something in a textbook, it's much harder to ignore and see. And so I think the more that you can put a face to these things, the more impact it can have and the stronger your message becomes.
I agree.
I do too. You're very right. We're told to tell our story, right?
Exactly.
Let's tell it to the right people.
So as an audience member, and I was listening to all of these amazing stories, Trina recommended, putting pen to paper, just start writing it out. Charles has written a book, Richie's written a book. So for people who have been inspired by this webinar, hey, I'm gonna wanna start a blog, I'm gonna wanna write a letter to my representative, what is the best advice you could give to our attendees with each of you of how you can write your story out?
Richie, would you like to take that first?
Well, I think it's important that you do take notes, take very good notes. And then once you feel like you're ready, then put everything together whether you put it in a book or whether it's your story and you go out and tell your story, but it's just important that you pay close attention to details. And the way to do that is taking notes and just be concise, again, aggressive.
I will definitely work on that. Trina, do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure, I would say speak on your experience. I think people connect more when you speak of your experience and make it relatable somewhere in your story.
Okay. And thank you. And Charles?
For me, I think I definitely agree with what Richie said about just taking notes. I always had a pad of paper or on my phone or something where I would just jot some notes or some ideas. But the biggest thing for me is to just be honest. I think sometimes we try to sugarcoat things or present a really idealistic idea, a Facebook idea of what the world's like some days. And there were times where I wrote about the really bad days, not as in a discouraging way, but saying this is where I am and I'm still going to have hope. I'm still going to keep going, but it's okay to be in this spot. And because sometimes somebody needs to read that and say, okay, I'm not the only one having a really bad day. I'm not the only one that's struggling with this. Someone else is not skipping through this without issue. And so I think that realism just reminds someone that they're not walking this path alone, especially at the most difficult points.
That's
if you don't mind,
important.
It is, right? I'd like to ask both of you because Trina, I don't know if you have, but I don't believe you have. Have you written a book, Miss Trina?
I have not written a book. No, I
No,
have
me
not.
neither. So I know you wanted to get your stories out there, but what made you finally decide to put that out there? Because I feel very awkward telling people, and it's not about people. It's more, I guess, my internal family, like my sons. I have sugarcoated it. Let's put 100%. So, even though they're 25 and 27, I don't necessarily tell them, hey, really just having a really cruddy day. Just leave me alone. So I don't know if I want to write that book. So help me, please.
I think it's
Talk
good
me into it.
I think it's good that you are honest in your book, just like Charles said. Um, Going through this journey, it's like a roller coaster. You have your good days and your bad days, and when you wake up the next day, you're not too sure how your day is going to be. And fighting with insurance companies and you name it. I put all of that in my book, and I named the companies. I didn't have any problem naming and being specific because I wanted that information to get out there, and I wanted people to know what all I went through so that my son's bills could be paid and he could make sure that he got his treatment, you know. So I think it's important that you do put the good and the bad and be as honest as possible. I told the story just like it was, and actually, a lot of the story my family didn't even know. You know, in the book, you cry some, you laugh some, but then overall, it was, I guess, a grieving mechanism for me. Writing the book was extremely difficult, but I felt good once I completed the book because I knew that if someone read my story, they would know that they're not alone because they're feeling the same thing that I felt. But you can rise above it, and that's what I wanted them to know. You can rise above it. Turning my pain into a purpose
Yes.
made me feel good because I am now able to give back, and then not only that, I'm honoring my son's wishes.
That is
And
beautiful, Richie.
I would agree with everything that Richie you just said. Rare disease by definition is isolating. And I can remember walking out of that doctor and just looking at my wife, just not knowing what we were going to do next.
Mhm.
I battled chronic illness in the form of arthritis since 15. And here I was now later in life having another journey. And just the only people I knew that had Parkinson's were 70 years old.
Mhm.
And just how alone that felt. And as I wrote, I want others, whether it was Parkinson's or something else, to see that we all have a battle. We all have something we face. You're not alone. But if I could help just one person in those first few months, when it feels so isolating and alone, say, somebody gets it. I'm not alone. That was the most important thing for me as I wrote this story. And no better compliment can I get than when someone says you put my life into words. And that's my goal for that. It's just, if nothing else, they know at least one other person that's walking the same path that they are.
And if I'm correct, you're going to be starting a support group on AMCAN. Am I correct?
I am. We're actually working on not only a online support group, but also here in the Nashville area, some local support activities to connect with some of the young onset crowd that's here as well. So yeah, we're looking to get both those started this fall.
Excellent. Excellent. I can't wait to hear your experiences with that as well.
Thank
Alexa, did you have more questions?
So one of the things I think is interesting is the fact that all of the groups here listed either have a support group with ANCAN or will with the young onset Parkinson's disease. Is it possible to do advocacy work within your own support groups, or is it advantageous to do that?
Richie, do you want to take this first?
I think it is good to do advocacy work in your own support group. For someone that's diagnosed and able to talk about it, I think it's more powerful when they can actually see that this person is advocating for themselves. Sometimes it's difficult to advocate for yourselves, but if you're feeling good, being able to just get out there and do something and make a difference. We have one person in our group that's really out there. He's doing well now, and he's one of the moderators. He's there to help anyone that's walking that journey. It just has more of an impact on the person that's actually going through it versus me as a caregiver. Sure, I can talk to a caregiver, but to actually walk that journey themselves, it's just powerful.
So Richie, you're saying we want to give a big shout out to Andre.
Yes, Captain Andre Sneed.
Tracy.
We
And we
love
also
him.
want to give a big shout out to Chris Moran because her husband Carlos is my connection to RMC. And Carissa, we love you. I just want to give a big shout out to you.
That was
Carissa,
sweet.
I have adopted her. I'm her Texas mom. I was able to walk with them through that last year of Carlos's journey, and it was just remarkable. Just to be able to help someone and you know, and they trust you, and that's a key. You know, that these people have to trust you, to feel that they can call you any time of the day or night. And I just felt good. And now she's turning her pain into purpose by helping others. She has just been a wonderful person, and she's also a moderator.
That's perfect. Trina, what have you found as a moderator for sarcoidosis? Have you found yourself advocating as well and helping others?
Yes, I find when you lean on one another, you can accomplish a greater goal.
I agree with you
It's
wholeheartedly
nothing
on
like
that.
bringing cadence to a platform. Nothing like it.
Yeah, and that's true. So unfortunately, with sarcoidosis, there's no two of us that are alike. So it's even more difficult to find this disease. We're called the snowflake disease. So it looks
So
like
true.
Mr. Rick is back on.
This is true.
Hi, Rick.
Hello.
Did you learn a whole bunch?
I certainly learned a whole bunch, and but I want to say that there were a lot of truths that I heard. For example, when Richie talks about people calling you day and night, I know they call her day and night, and I know they call her from all over the world day and night. God knows what time in the morning, and she's always
All
there.
different time zones.
Oh my gosh, and she's always there to pick up that telephone for him. And another thing I wanted to say, which came out of something also that Richie said, was that it's always been very important to us, and maybe one way that we differentiate ourselves at ANCAN is that our moderators are peers. We feel it's very, very important for your moderators to be peers, and Richie's a peer because we have caregivers who attend the RMC group. And so they're talking to Richie as a peer, and then we have people that are living with RMC and they talk too. And we just know that the strength of the message is far greater when it comes from a peer rather than from a professional or just a moderator or somebody like me, for example. So we really believe in peer support. It's essential. I will say, having listened to this, that I think there could be a book in your futures, Trina and Kathleen, together maybe. And you have a mentor in Frank. How many books has Frank written? Two?
Two. Yes,
Two.
yes.
Yes.
Two.
So what you got to do is ask,
We'll see you.
Frank Rivera, and I think he'll do fine. I really came on because I think we need to close out. It's almost the witching hour. It's
Yes,
been,
thank you to all our panelists.
yeah, a huge thank you to all our panelists.
Fantastic.
And to Kaitlyn, who is no longer with us. I don't think. She seemed like she was having some difficulties there in terms of her internet connection. I want to just tell you all that the recording will be available, as will the slides. We will post them on the blog, on the ANCAN blog. So please sign up for the ANCAN blog, and then you'll get a notice when as soon as we put it there. The recording will be on the YouTube channel probably tomorrow, but we cannot post the slides to the YouTube channel, so you'll need to wait a little bit for that. And a final thank you to our sponsors, My Event Pfizer, Foundation Medicine, and whoever else was on this one, I forget, Novartis, I believe. But thank you all. Thank you for listening. And keep a watch on our webinar schedule, because we've got a couple of very exciting webinars coming up with some great people on managing your healthcare team, and one later in the year on anxiety, health anxiety and health stress. So from ANCAN, we hope you enjoyed this. We hope you found it useful. Good night.